After 25 years of marriage, my wife left me for a younger, richer man. When they ambushed me at school drop-off, flaunting their perfect life, I wanted to disappear. But that day, I got news that would change everything. Now her new husband is desperate enough to recruit my own son as a corporate spy. He's about to learn why you never underestimate a man with nothing left to lose. My name is Mitchell Harrington. I'm 53 years old and the founder of Flight Sim Pro, a company that develops training software and simulators for pilots. We started small, just me coding in my garage while Elaine supported us with her teaching job. Now we're the industry leader with contracts across the country. That success cost me my marriage, though I didn't know at the time. It was parent-teacher conference day at Westridge High. I'd promised Olivia I'd be there to discuss her college applications, even though it wasn't my day, according to the custody arrangement. I pulled into the school parking lot, checking my watch, 15 minutes early. That's when I spotted them. Elaine and her new husband, Warren Mercer, standing by the main entrance like they owned the place. Warren, with his Italian suits and fake tan, had his arm wrapped possessively around my ex-wife's waist. They hadn't noticed me yet. I considered driving away. At 53, I was too old for schoolyard drama. But then I thought of Olivia, waiting inside. My daughter needed me. I wasn't going to let Elaine and her trophy husband drive me away. As I stepped out of my car, they turned simultaneously. Elaine's smile faltered for a split second before she recovered, nudging Warren. "Mitch," she called out, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "What a surprise to see you here today." I straightened my shoulders, suddenly grateful I'd worn my good blazer instead of my usual work clothes. "Hello, Elaine." "Warren, I'm here for Olivia's conference." Warren's smile widened, revealing his two perfect veneers. "But it's not your weekend, is it, Mitch? Elaine mentioned you've been so busy with your little business. We didn't think you'd make time." My jaw tightened. 3 years after the divorce, and they were still taking shots. My little business had just signed a contract with 2 major airlines, but Warren talked about it like it was a hobby shop. "I always make time for my children," I replied, keeping my voice even. "Some things are more important than work." Elaine's eyes narrowed slightly. "How nice. We were just talking about our summer plans. Warren's taking us to his villa in Tuscany for a month. The kids are thrilled." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. I glanced down at the screen and couldn't help the genuine smile that spread across my face. It was an email confirming our company had been selected for the Air Force training contract. The one Warren's aerospace consulting firm had also bid on. They must have noticed a change in my expression, because their smug smiles began to fade. "Good news?" Elaine asked, a hint of unease in her voice. "The best," I replied, sliding my phone back into my pocket. "But I should get inside. Olivia's waiting." As I walked past them toward the entrance, I could feel their eyes on my back. For the first time since the divorce, I didn't feel diminished by their presence. Things were finally turning around, and they could sense it. The game was about to change. I found Olivia waiting outside her English teacher's classroom, scrolling through her phone. At 15, she was growing into a beautiful young woman who reminded me more of her mother every day, except for her eyes. Those were all mine. "Dad," she looked up, surprised. "You actually came." "Of course I did," I said, giving her a quick hug. "I promised, didn't I?" She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Mom said you'd probably cancel. She said you've been wrapped up in some big contract." I felt a familiar burn of anger, but kept my expression neutral. "Your mom doesn't always know my schedule." Speaking of which, I saw her and Warren outside. Olivia rolled her eyes. "They're everywhere lately. Warren keeps trying to bond with me over college stuff. Yesterday, he brought home brochures for Stanford, his alma mater." She made air quotes around the last words. Before I could respond, her teacher opened the door and welcomed us in. The conference went well. Ms. Peterson praised Olivia's writing skills and leadership potential. I sat there bursting with pride, thinking about how much she'd grown despite the turmoil of the past few years. As we walked out afterward, Olivia asked, "What was that good news you got?" Mom seemed bothered when I passed them on my way in. I smiled. "The Air Force training contract. We won it." Olivia's eyes widened. "Isn't that the one Warren's company was after too?" "The very same," I admitted, trying and failing to suppress my satisfaction. "No wonder they looked like they'd swallowed something sour," she laughed. At the parking lot, Elaine and Warren were waiting by their Mercedes. I braced myself for another confrontation. "Mitch," Elaine called out. "Can we talk for a minute? Alone?" I looked at Olivia. "Wait in the car, sweetheart." When she was out of earshot, Elaine's pleasant facade vanished. "That Air Force contract. Is it true?" "It's true," I confirmed. "The announcement goes public tomorrow." Warren stepped forward. "There must be some mistake. My sources at the Pentagon were wrong." I finished for him. "Our simulator outperformed the competition at half the cost. Sometimes the better product wins, Warren." His face reddened. "This isn't over, Harrington. That contract should have been mine." "Our contract was awarded on merit," I replied calmly. "If you want to dispute it, feel free to file a formal protest. I'm sure the Air Force Procurement Office would love the publicity." Warren opened his mouth to respond, but Elaine placed a restraining hand on his arm. "We should go," she said quietly. As they walked away, I heard Warren's angry whisper. "Did you know his company was this close to landing it?" I couldn't hear Elaine's response, but her stiff posture told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't just about a contract. This was about the narrative they'd built, that I was the failing ex-husband while they were living the dream life. That narrative was starting to crumble. The morning after the parent-teacher conference, I arrived at Flight Sim Pro headquarters earlier than usual. The office was quiet, with only a few early birds setting up for the day. I needed time to prepare before the Air Force contract announcement went public. Reggie was already in the conference room, surrounded by papers. At 55, he had a few years on me, but his energy put most 30-year-olds to shame. Our friendship had weathered college, marriages, divorces, and 20 years of business partnership. "Morning, champion," he greeted, sliding a coffee cup my way. "I've been drafting the press release. How'd Olivia's conference go?" "The conference? Great. The run-in with Elaine and Warren?" "Less so. I filled him in on yesterday's encounter." Reggie shook his head. "Warren's still sore about losing that defense contract he'd promised his investors. Word is his company's struggling. That might explain their interest in our Air Force deal," I said, thinking aloud. "But it doesn't make sense. Mercer Aerospace specializes in hardware. We're software and simulation. Maybe they're diversifying," Reggie suggested, but his expression was skeptical. Before I could respond, my office phone rang. It was Zachary. "Dad," my son's voice came through, unusually tense. "Something weird just happened. Warren showed up at my robotics lab at college." My grip tightened on the receiver. "Warren came to your school? What did he want?" "He said he was visiting a colleague in the engineering department, but then he started asking questions about your new simulator system, the one for the Air Force. Wanted to know about the physics engine, the haptic feedback mechanisms." A cold knot formed in my stomach. "What did you tell him?" "Nothing important," Zachary assured me. "I know better than to discuss proprietary tech." "But Dad, he offered me an internship at his company. Said they could use someone with my insider knowledge of simulation software." Reggie, seeing my expression darken, mouthed, "What's wrong?" I raised a hand, focusing on the call. "Zach, listen to me. Warren's company lost the bid on a major contract, and now he's fishing for information. Stay away from him." "Already planned to," Zach replied. "Just thought you should know." After hanging up, I filled Reggie in on Warren's latest move. "That's crossing a line," Reggie said, his normally cheerful face hardening. "Using your son to get company secrets? That's industrial espionage territory." I nodded, my mind racing. It confirms what I suspected. Warren isn't just annoyed about losing a contract. He's desperate. "What do you want to do?" Reggie asked. "First, I'm calling our attorney to document this. Then I'm implementing Security Protocol B. This was our highest level of digital security, reserved for our most sensitive projects." "And Elaine?" Reggie's question hung in the air. "I'll deal with Elaine personally," I said, my voice firm. "No one targets my kids. No one." As I dialed our lawyer's number, I realized Warren had miscalculated badly. I could handle his business rivalry and even his smug attitude, but going after my son? He'd just awakened a side of me he'd never seen before, the side that had built a company from nothing, that had survived a crushing divorce, that didn't back down from fights, the side that always won. Armed with our lawyer's advice, I drove to Elaine's house that evening. The November air was crisp, carrying the scent of wood smoke and fallen leaves. The upscale neighborhood where she now lived with Warren was quiet, each house set back from the street behind manicured lawns and security gates. I pressed the intercom at Elaine's gate, steeling myself for the conversation ahead. Yes. Her voice came through the speaker with static. It's Mitch. We need to talk. A pause. Then the gate swung open without further comment. As I parked in the circular driveway, I took a deep breath. My anger had cooled into something more dangerous. Cold, calculated resolve. Elaine opened the door before I could knock. Warren's not here, she said immediately. Good. This conversation should be between us anyway. She led me to the kitchen, a showcase of stainless steel and granite that had probably been featured in some home design magazine. What's so urgent? Warren approached Zachary at his college today. He asked about our proprietary technology and offered him an internship in exchange for information. Her carefully maintained composure slipped. What? No, that's not possible. It happened, Elaine. Zach called me himself. She sank onto a bar stool. Warren mentioned meeting with a professor at Tech today, but nothing about Zachary. He's trying to steal our technology, I said flatly. The technology that just won us the Air Force contract. That's absurd, she protested, but her voice lacked conviction. Warren wouldn't risk his reputation. His reputation might be all he has left. I interrupted. Reggie's contacts in the industry say Mercer Aerospace is in trouble. Losing the defense contract hit them hard. Elaine's gaze dropped to her hands, where she was twisting her wedding ring, an old nervous habit. What are you going to do? I've already called our lawyer and upgraded our security protocols. What happens next depends on Warren. What does that mean? Alarm crept into her voice. It means if he approaches our employees or our children again, I'll file for a restraining order and report him to the FBI for attempted corporate espionage. You wouldn't. I met her gaze steadily. When it comes to protecting my company and my kids, there's nothing I wouldn't do. You of all people should know that. A flash of the old Elaine, the woman I'd built a life with, surfaced in her eyes. I'll talk to him. Make sure he understands the stakes, I said, rising to leave. I built Flight Sim from nothing while raising our children. I'm not about to let Warren take it because he's too proud to admit his business is failing. At the door, Elaine called after me. Mitch, wait. Is it true? Is Warren's company in trouble? I turned back. Ask your husband. And while you're at it, ask him why he thought it was acceptable to use our son as an industrial spy. As I drove away, I caught a glimpse of Elaine in my rearview mirror, standing in the doorway of the mansion she'd chosen over our marriage. For the first time since the divorce, she looked uncertain about her choice. Good. Uncertainty was the first step toward clarity. The Air Force contract announcement made headlines in the industry press. Our company's stock jumped 12% by closing bell. The office was buzzing with excitement, but I remained vigilant. Warren's attempt to recruit Zachary had me on high alert. I spent the morning in back-to-back meetings with our security team, upgrading protocols, and conducting an audit of all our systems. By noon, I was reviewing access logs when Reggie knocked on my door. You need to see this, he said, placing his tablet in front of me. The screen showed a financial news article. Mercer Aerospace stocks plummet amid contract loss and investor exodus. The photo featured Warren looking haggard as he left his corporate headquarters. It's worse than we thought, Reggie said. According to my source at Goldman, they've lost nearly 40% of their market value. 3 board members have resigned. I whistled softly. No wonder he's desperate enough to approach Zachary. There's more, Reggie continued. Rumor has it they've been operating on borrowed capital for months, using projected revenue from the defense contract as collateral. With that gone, they're facing bankruptcy. I finished. My phone rang, Olivia's ringtone. I answered immediately. Dad, her voice sounded tight. Something weird is happening at home. Mom and Warren are fighting, and there are men in suits going through Warren's office. Mom's crying. My parental instincts kicked in. Where are you? In my bedroom. Should I be worried? I kept my voice calm. No, sweetheart. But I'm coming to get you. Pack an overnight bag. After hanging up, I explained the situation to Reggie. I need to get Olivia. Something's happening at Elaine's house. Go, he nodded. I'll handle things here. 20 minutes later, I pulled up to Elaine's gate. It stood open, unusual for their security-conscious household. I drove through, noting 2 black sedans in the driveway beside Warren's Porsche. Olivia was waiting at the door with her backpack. Dad, I think they're federal agents, she whispered as I approached. I heard one of them say security's fraud. Before I could respond, Elaine appeared behind her, eyes red-rimmed. "Mitch," she said, her voice hoarse. "Can we talk?" I nodded to Olivia. "Wait in the car, please." When she was out of earshot, Elaine's composure crumbled. "It's all falling apart. The SEC is investigating Warren for misleading investors. They're saying he used insider information to secure loans." She looked at me desperately. "Did you report him?" "No," I answered truthfully. But his approach to Zachary crossed a line. "I documented it with our lawyer." Elaine closed her eyes briefly. "He's been making bad decisions for months. I told him to leave your company alone, but he wouldn't listen." A man in a dark suit appeared in the hallway. "Mrs. Mercer, we need you to sign these papers." "I have to go," she said. "Take good care of Olivia. I don't want her here while this plays out." As I walked back to my car, my phone buzzed with a text from Zachary. "Just saw the news about Warren. Are you behind this?" I typed back, "No." His own actions caught up with him. Driving away with Olivia, I glanced in my rearview mirror at the house Elaine had chosen over our marriage, now swarming with federal agents. I felt no satisfaction in Warren's downfall, only relief that the threat to my company was neutralized. Some battles you win, others win themselves. The next morning's headline confirmed what Olivia had witnessed. Mercer Aerospace CEO under investigation for securities fraud. The article detailed allegations that Warren had misrepresented his company's financial position to investors, using the promise of the Air Force contract to secure millions in financing. Olivia sat across from me at the breakfast table, scanning the news on her tablet. "So Warren's going to jail?" "It's not that simple," I explained, pouring her more orange juice. "But he's in serious trouble. Mom called earlier," she said carefully. She sounded different. "Said she might need to stay with Aunt Susan for a while." I nodded, unsurprised. Elaine's sister had always been her safe harbor in troubled times. "How do you feel about everything?" I asked. Olivia considered the question. "Confused. Mom's been different since marrying Warren, more concerned with appearances than reality. It was exhausting pretending everything was perfect." Her insight struck me. At 15, she'd seen through the facade that had fooled so many others. My phone rang, an unfamiliar number. I almost ignored it, but decided to answer. "Mitchell Harrington speaking." "Mr. Harrington, this is Detective Rollins with the Financial Crimes Division. We'd like to speak with you regarding Warren Mercer and a potential corporate espionage situation involving your son." I stepped into my office for privacy, explaining Zachary's encounter with Warren. The detective seemed particularly interested in the timing, just days after Warren lost the Air Force contract. "We'll need formal statement from both you and your son," he said. "This corroborates our existing evidence of Mr. Mercer's desperate attempts to salvage his company." After the call, I phoned Zachary to warn him about the upcoming police interview. He took in stride, always the pragmatist. I saved the text he sent after our meeting. Zach told me. "They're pretty explicit about wanting Flight Sim's proprietary code." I felt a surge of pride in my son's foresight. Smart thinking. Later that day, I received a call I never expected from Elaine. "Mitch," she began hesitantly, "I owe you an apology. I believed Warren when he said your company was struggling, that leaving you was the smart choice financially." Her voice broke. "I was wrong on every count." The admission caught me off guard. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I've been living a lie," she said quietly, "and watching you stand your ground, protecting our children, your company, your principles. It's made me realize what I gave up." I didn't know how to respond. 3 years of anger and hurt couldn't be erased by one moment of clarity. "I hope you find your way through this, Elaine," I finally said. "For your sake and the kids." After hanging up, I stood by my office window, watching the sunset paint the sky in fiery oranges and reds. The world I'd known for 3 years was shifting again, but this time I was standing on solid ground. The investigation into Warren Mercer dominated business news for weeks. Flight Sim Pro remained mostly on the periphery, mentioned as the company that legitimately won the Air Force contract, but otherwise untouched by the scandal. I worked to keep it that way, focusing on delivering our simulator on schedule. One crisp December morning, I received a call from Detective Rollins. "Mr. Harrington, I wanted to update you personally. Warren Mercer has agreed to a plea deal. He's facing significant jail time and financial penalties, but the case won't go to trial." "I appreciate the call," I said. "What about the corporate espionage angle with my son?" "That was instrumental in our case. Rollins explained. The attempted recruitment of your son demonstrated a pattern of desperate, illegal behavior. Mr. Mercer's legal team couldn't explain it away. After hanging up, I sat quietly processing the news. The threat to my company was over, but I took no joy in Warren's downfall. At 53, I'd learned that revenge was an empty pursuit. That evening, Zachary and Olivia came for dinner. Having both kids under my roof felt like a victory, more meaningful than any business success. Mom's selling the house, Olivia announced as we ate. She's looking for an apartment closer to her school. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. How do you feel about that? Olivia shrugged. It's just a house. Too big anyway. Zachary, more perceptive at 17, studied my face. Dad, are you and Mom talking again? Like really talking? We're communicating better, I admitted carefully. The situation with Warren forced us to. She told me she regrets leaving. Olivia said bluntly, with a teenager's directness. Said it was the biggest mistake of her life. I nearly choked on my water. She said that to you? Well, she was crying and thought I was asleep, Olivia clarified. But yes. Zachary leaned forward. So what happens now? Now, I said firmly, we focus on moving forward. Your mother's going through a difficult time. She needs your support, not speculation about our relationship. Later, after the kids had gone to bed, I stepped onto my back deck with a glass of scotch. The night was clear, stars piercing the darkness above the city lights. My phone buzzed with a text from Elaine. Kids get home okay? I typed back. They're staying here tonight. You're welcome to join us for breakfast tomorrow. Her response came quickly. I'd like that. Thank you, Mitch. It wasn't forgiveness or reconciliation. Not yet. But it was a step toward a new kind of relationship. One based on the shared love for our children rather than the bitterness of our past. As I gazed at the stars, I realized I felt lighter than I had in years. Not because Warren had fallen or because Elaine regretted leaving, but because I'd stayed true to myself through the entire ordeal. I'd protected what mattered without compromising who I was. Some men measure strength by what they acquire. I'd learned to measure it by what I refused to lose, my integrity, my children's respect, and the business I'd built with my own hands. The first snow of winter dusted the city, transforming the view from my office window. Inside, the Flight Sim Pro team was celebrating. The Air Force simulator had passed its final testing phase with flying colors, and the Department of Defense was already discussing additional contracts. Reggie burst into my office, brandishing a bottle of champagne. They're talking about expanding the order. 20 more units. I grinned. Not bad for a little business, huh? Not bad at all, came a voice from the doorway. Elaine stood there, looking smaller somehow, without her designer clothes and perfect makeup. It had been 3 weeks since Warren's plea deal, 3 weeks of cautious rebuilding between us. Sorry to interrupt, she said. The receptionist said I could come up. Reggie, ever tactful, excused himself with the champagne. I'll get this on ice. Nice to see you, Elaine. When we were alone, she approached my desk. Congratulations on the Air Force success. The kids told me how important this contract is. Thank you, I said, gesturing for her to sit. How are you holding up? She sighed. One day at a time. The divorce proceedings are moving forward. My lawyer thinks it'll be finalized by spring. I nodded, unsure what to say. Our conversations these days were mostly about the children, navigating this new terrain of almost friendship. I have something for you, she said, reaching into her purse. She pulled out a small wooden box that made my heart skip. I'd carved it for her on our 5th anniversary. I kept this, she explained, pushing it across my desk. Even when Warren wanted me to get rid of anything from our marriage. Some things I couldn't let go of. I opened the box carefully. Inside lay my father's pocket watch, the one I'd thought lost in the divorce. I took it, she admitted, not because I had a right to it, but because I wanted something of you to keep. It was childish and wrong. My throat tightened as I lifted the watch. It had been my father's most prized possession, his legacy to me. Thank you for returning it, I managed. Mitch, she began hesitantly, I know I have no right to ask this, but would you consider having dinner sometime? Just to talk. About the past, maybe about the future. The question hung between us, weighted with 25 years of shared history, the good and the bad. One step at a time, Elaine, I said finally. We're in a better place now than we've been in years. Let's not rush it. She nodded, understanding in her eyes. That's fair. For what it's worth, seeing you stand your ground these past months, protecting the kids, your company, your principles, it reminded me of the man I fell in love with. The man I never should have left. After she departed, I sat holding my father's watch, feeling its familiar weight. The second hand ticked steadily, marking time, moving forward, never back. Like life itself. That evening, I called Zachary and Olivia to share the news about the expanded Air Force contract. Their excitement warmed me more than any business success could. Dad, Zachary said before hanging up, I'm proud of you. For everything. For simple words, but they meant the world. 6 months after Warren's plea deal, life had settled into a new rhythm. Flight Sim Pro was thriving with the expanded Air Force contract, and we begun developing commercial applications of our technology for major airlines. At 53, I found myself more engaged with my work than ever before, mentoring younger engineers and planning the company's future. Zachary graduated with honors and accepted an engineering position with a respected aerospace firm. Not with us, which I respected. He needed to build his own legacy. Olivia had blossomed in her final years of high school, her confidence growing as the shadow of Warren's influence faded. On a warm June evening, I hosted a graduation barbecue for Zachary at my home. Friends, family, and colleagues gathered in the backyard, celebrating not just his achievement, but the stability we'd all found after the turbulence of recent years. Elaine arrived last, looking nervous as she carried a wrapped gift. We've been cautiously rebuilding our relationship, not as husband and wife, but as parents and maybe, eventually, friends. Beautiful party, she said, joining me by the grill. You've always been good at bringing people together. Thanks for coming, I replied sincerely. It means a lot to Zach. She nodded, watching our son laughing with his friends across the yard. He's so much like you, Mitch. The good parts. I smiled at that. He's his own man now. We both did something right. You did most of it, she admitted. Especially these last few years. She hesitated. I've been offered a teaching position in Boston. I'm considering taking it. The news surprised me. That's quite a change. A fresh start, she said. But I want to talk to you and the kids first. I don't want to disrupt things again. Not when we're all finding our balance. Her consideration, something absent during our divorce, touched me. People could change, it seemed, given enough time and hard lessons. The kids are adults now, I reminded her, and we've all learned to adapt. If this is what you need, you should pursue it. Relief softened her features. Thank you, Mitch. As the evening progressed, I found myself surrounded by everything that mattered. My children, my friends, the business I'd built. The pain of betrayal that had defined so much of the past few years felt distant now, replaced by something unexpected, gratitude. Life hadn't gone according to plan, but standing in my backyard watching my son embark on his future, I realized it had gone exactly where it needed to. Autumn painted the city in shades of gold and crimson as I celebrated my 54th birthday. The past year had brought changes I never anticipated. Expansions to the business, Zachary's first professional successes, Olivia's college acceptances. Through it all, I discovered a resilience I hadn't known I possessed. Elaine had moved to Boston 2 months earlier, after long conversations with both kids. Our relationship had evolved into something neither of us expected. A friendship based on mutual respect and shared history, without the bitterness that once defined it. Healing, I'd learned, came its own time, following its own path. Warren served his sentence at a minimum security prison, his empire dismantled. I felt no satisfaction in his downfall, only relief that his influence over my family had ended. Some victories weren't about winning, but about regaining what you'd lost. In my case, peace of mind. On the business front, Flight Sim Pro had reached new heights. The Air Force contract had opened doors throughout the defense sector, and our commercial aviation division was revolutionizing pilot training worldwide. Reggie and I had begun discussions about legacy planning, not retirement, but ensuring the company's values and vision would outlast us. I was reviewing acquisition proposals in my home office when the doorbell rang. Olivia stood outside, home for a weekend visit from college. "Happy birthday, Dad," she said, hugging me tightly. "I have something for you." She handed me a small package. Inside was a framed photograph I'd never seen, My father standing beside his own father, both in Air Force uniforms. Mom found it when she was packing, Olivia explained. She thought you should have it. The gesture spoke volumes about how far we'd all come. Later, as Olivia and I shared dinner, she asked the question I'd been pondering myself. Are you happy, Dad? Really happy? I considered carefully before answering. Yes, I said finally. Not because everything's perfect, but because I've made peace with what isn't. She smiled, satisfied. That's all I wanted to know. That night, standing on my back deck under a canopy of stars, I reflected on the journey of the past few years. The ambush at the school drop-off that had once symbolized my humiliation now seemed like the beginning of my redemption. The smirks that had faded from Warren and Elaine's faces represented the first breaks in a false narrative about who I was and who I could become. I had rebuilt more than a business. I had rebuilt myself, and that was the greatest success of all.